Hey, what's going on, Ram fans? Mark from Rams Up here, and I am so glad to have Payo Time, the Canadian Ram fan, on with us. What is going on, Payo Time?
Mark, thanks so much for having me on. It's an honor to join you. I'll say this: the Rams Up Podcast Network. You guys have become one of my favorite podcasts to listen to. I was telling you off screen, it's been so cool seeing you guys grow this past season. I think you guys have a really great chemistry, and I'm excited to chat with you today and talk some Rams.
Yeah, and I love your channel just for what you just displayed there. Your exuberance. You're so upbeat. If you're a Ram fan and you ever need a lift, to just check out Payo Times channel. Hey, why don't you share everybody? Tell everybody how to find you on YouTube and elsewhere.
Yeah, you can just find me at Payo Time. It's kind of a unique name that comes up right away if you search it in YouTube. And I host watch parties for all the Rams games. That's probably what most people know me for. But I post reaction videos. I like to say I'm just having as much fun as possible on the internet, talking about my favorite NFL team, the Los Angeles Rams. And I'm from Nova Scotia, Canada, so I have a very different perspective than a lot of other Ram fans that are maybe more local, and not that it's a better perspective or anything like that. Just it's different because I didn't grow up around St. Louis or Los Angeles, and so I'm excited. I love talking to people in the comments, and I just posted a video reacting to a bunch of comments on a post that I did, and that was a lot of fun. Just nerding out over the Rams for about like 29 minutes.
Hey, and I seem to remember, correct me if I'm wrong, weren't you in Los Angeles and did you do the SoFi tour?
I did, yes. I've been to SoFi twice in my life. Once for a game that was amazing. I went to the Rams Falcons in the 2022 season, week 2, and that was my first time there. That was phenomenal. And then my professional work sent me to Los Angeles for a conference, and I sneaky kind of snuck away from the conference for a little bit, and
Let's check. Let's check this guy's time card.
yeah, I did the SoFi Stadium tour, and I love SoFi Stadium. I can't wait to go back. I hope to make it there next season. It's always tough because I live so far away, but if you ever get a chance to go to SoFi, make sure you go.
Yeah. Now the tour, I've told people many times. I think it was before the first game was played at SoFi. I have to check my calendar. Whatever that summer that was, and a bunch of us went down there. My extended family. There was like 7 or 8 of us, and the tour itself was cool. You know, they take you around the seats and the suites and the locker room, and then the way they did it with us is they played that entrance music, and we ran out of the tunnel onto the field,
Yeah,
and then after that. It's pretty much do whatever you want on the field. We were out there for, I think, 2 hours, kicking
yeah,
field goals, throwing touchdown passes in the end zone, and it was a blast.
yeah. That was the same for me. My second time, my first time I went because there was a game the next day. And I was in one of the later tour groups in the day because they have like multiple time slots. And so I I think we only got to hang out in the field for probably about 40 minutes afterwards, which was still really cool. And thing. But yeah, if you're doing the stadium tour, maybe try and consider going in one of those earlier time slots so you can hang out on the field for as much as you want.
Yeah, and it was much more informal than I expected, and the parking was a breeze. No, they didn't charge us. I think we paid $40 a person, something like that. It was
Yeah,
not expensive,
it's
and
worth it.
yeah, it was a great time. And I was really surprised they just let us out on the field and hey, see you later, have fun.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Rams 2024 season. I guess let me ask you this. Would you consider it a success or a failure or somewhere in between?
Ooh, you know what? I'm gonna say success, but unfulfilling. I love this season. I will treasure this season for a long time. When you know, I started covering the Rams in this YouTube world in 2021, the Super Bowl year, and I would say that year is still kind of my favorite, like I was able to ride the highs and the lows with that, and I think convey that on a YouTube platform pretty well. But then 2022 came and it was just like down, down. Okay, injuries, injuries, injuries. Baker Mayfield Thursday night game was kind of cool. The Christmas game that year was cool, but like it was, overall a disappointing season. And then 2023, you had the like, hey, we this mystery team that we're not exactly sure what it's going to be, and they're a lot better than what people expected. They started 3-6, make the playoffs, lose on the first round, and then this year, even when we were 1-4, I remember thinking, just based on what the NFC West was doing as a lead, like whenever the Cardinals are in first place mid-season, I still think there's a good chance for anyone to win the division. And so I really got to a point where I was like, okay, this year, like we're not out of this yet. And when they beat the Vikings on Thursday night, that really was like beating the Raiders. I know that kind of was the start of the winning streak, but beating the Vikings on Thursday night on a short week, that was when I was like, okay, this team is going to compete for the playoffs. They're going to compete for the NFC West. And so I never want to not celebrate winning the NFC West. Because for a lot of years, that was not on the table. And so I'm very thankful for that. That's one of the things I love about this, Sean McVay era of the Los Angeles Rams is it's fun to have a team with expectations. And I think the expectation for this season going into it, for me at least, was we're going to compete to win the division. And that was a huge success. They won the division, close with Seattle. I know you go to that tiebreaker, but they still won it. And then they won a playoff game. And I still think a couple things go different in that Eagles game. Rams are in the NFC Championship game. I think they could have beaten the Commanders, and I think they could be in the Super Bowl facing off against the Chiefs. And so it's too bad it didn't work out. And so that's the unfulfilling part, because you could see the story there. You could see it, but we didn't quite get there. But still, I will celebrate this season. There were some really cool games. There was some really cool plays. Yeah, what about you? Would you consider this season a success?
I kind of agree with you 100%. It was, you always want to be in the dance. You just want to get to the playoffs, and anything can happen. And, when the Eagles went up, 13 points, whatever it was, the big run, and you're like, okay, we're done. We're toast. And then we bounce back and then drive the field again, have a shot there. And you're just thinking, it's a case of what could have been, because if they close that out at the end there, and things play out like you think they might have over the next against the Commanders and then potentially the Chiefs, we would potentially have looked back on that Eagles game as just one of the epic victories in Rams history, and we just missed. And I have to say, I don't know how many people would agree with me, but I go back to that Rams Chiefs game at the Coliseum, whatever year that was, that 54-51, whatever it was. Yeah. And ever since that game, I've wanted to see the Chiefs and Rams in the Super Bowl. And I think a lot of people would. I think that would be such an attractive matchup. This year it would have been as well. Chiefs probably would have been favored by 3.5, 4.5 points, but Matthew Stafford versus Mahomes, Andy Reid versus Sean McVay. That would have been, I think it would have been a much more attractive game than what we're getting. I'm not really too excited about the Eagles Chiefs, but it's a Super Bowl. It'll be fun. Yeah. But yeah, I kind of agree with you. So moving forward, looking ahead to the 2025 season, there's three names I think about when we're talking 2025. As far as the current roster, Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Alaric Jackson. Those are the three names on my mind. And how do you feel about this? It looks like, so I was watching one of the NFL insiders, and he was talking about, everybody, the Rams and the Stafford camp expect him to be back with the Rams. It's not going to be at his current contract price point, though. They're going to have to throw another 10 million or so at him. I guess there's a slight chance they could trade him, but I think every Ram fan loves Matthew Stafford, but I guess do you think the Rams just need to pay the man whatever it takes, or how do you feel about
So
it?
I was doing a video earlier today here, and I actually, if you, I took a better look at Stafford's contract, and like currently right now, his only guaranteed money on the 2025 season is $4 million, right? And I think that and anything I've learned about professional sports contract, and I'm not an agent. I'm just I'm a fan who's followed the team for a long time, and I find the offseason just as fun and interesting as the regular season. No quarterback that's a veteran, proven quarterback in the NFL that's not on a rookie contract is going to pay or is going to play with only $4 million guaranteed. And I think that that's important to note that I'm curious how much this contract is going to be. And last year there was the contract feud or whatever with Stafford. I thought it was handled very professionally, and it got dealt with. I do expect there to be a degree of urgency to get this done earlier rather than later, because I describe this is the first domino of the offseason to fall, right? Like once Stafford's contract falls, you're going to figure out the Alaric Jackson contract. You're going to figure out what's happening with Cooper Kupp. Kyron Williams, like he doesn't have very much guaranteed money at all. I expect him to look to get an extension and get his first big contract of his career. And so it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. I think that Stafford has every right to negotiate this contract, negotiate this deal. There is that element of, what is the quarterback market? And it'll be interesting to see, like, is he going for Dak money? I don't quite think so, but I could see him, trying to get, into that conversation of above 50 million per year. Just not sure how much of that is going to be guaranteed.
Yeah, what confuses me about Stafford is we all know he wants another Super Bowl ring, and
Yeah.
that is his ticket. If he's not already destined for the Hall of Fame, that would seal the deal.
Yeah.
And Tom Brady, his approach, I really admire looking back now. Hey, pay the other guys. I got my money. I mean, they still paid him well, but I just wish Matthew Stafford. Maybe I'm being naive, but hey, the we not me. The best way to get me to the Hall of Fame with another Super Bowl ring is throw some money at me, a reasonable amount, and let's pay some other guys and let's go get it. But I don't. It appears that is not going to happen. Now,
Well,
we'll go ahead.
so I'll just challenge. Like I would say that might happen, but like because when I hear some fans talk about that, and I'm guilty of it myself, I think, oh yeah, Stafford, like take the veteran minimum, right? Like that.
Right.
Like I don't see that quite happening. But like if Stafford takes like based on the projected cap increase that's coming in March, and also just if you take kind of the quarterback market and what's going on. If Stafford stays outside of like the top five, and like he's in kind of the top 10 paid quarterbacks in the NFL, that is taking a discount,
Yeah.
right? And some Ram fans may not necessarily see it that way, but I could see something like that happening. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, and he's clearly a top three NFC quarterback, if not the best. Guys like Jaden Daniels coming on, but he's still, he's an elite quarterback.
Yeah.
Now Cooper Cup to me, he's almost in that Isaac Bruce stratosphere where I don't want to see him wearing another team's uniform. But the money we're paying him compared to the production, it's a little concerning. Maybe they'll restructure it and he'll come back. That would be the ideal situation. I don't want to see him leave, but at the same time, I don't think he's a wide receiver number one anymore. I suspect, I think I'm going to get 100% agreement from Ram fans on that. Keep Cooper Kupp, but maybe try to restructure. How do you agree with me on Cooper Kupp?
So I agree, and Cooper Cup he's become one of my favorite Rams players of all time. I appreciate him on and off the field. I'm one of the few people that listened to him and his wife's podcast every episode last off season. I hope I enjoyed it. I hope they bring it back. I called it my dishes podcast. Whenever I was doing dishes, I would have it on in the background. I think that what's interesting about Cooper Cup is, you know, he is 31 years old, and it's not like we're we have this expectation of, okay, triple crown winner Cooper Cup next year again. I would like to make him. I would like to see, Cooper Cup one more year in this offense, one more year healthy, recovering from injury. And maybe the offense needs to change. I don't know, something like that. I do think there is a pathway forward where Cooper Cup has a restructure and potentially a really high incentive, kind of, a contract that maybe features more like, okay, if you have a certain catch percentage, if you have, a certain amount of yards or touchdowns or things like that, like having these kind of mile markers to hit. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I do think Cooper Cup is again a professional. I do think that Stafford's contract and Cooper Cup's contract and Alaric Jackson's they're their own separate business transaction. But you go back to your quarterback. Does Stafford want Cup back? Well, let's have that conversation of like what financially needs to happen to get your left tackle back in Jackson, to get Cup back, a wide receiver you really appreciate, and then to get you the quarterback back. So I think that they're interwoven, even though they are separate, business transactions.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I think you're right. And the left tackle situation is another deal where, I mean, Alaric Jackson, he's come such a long way,
Yeah.
undrafted, and
Canadian.
now, yeah, oh right, and he's proven to be, he's a top 10 or 15 left tackle in the league,
Yep.
possibly even better. Pro Football Focus had him as a top 20 tackle. I think that's between left and right, including right tackles. And he's going to get paid by someone. It's just a matter of, we got to remember, he's got to want to come back. He may have plans. He may have other plans in mind. But let's, for a second here, propose that he signs with someone else. Would that elevate left tackle as a top priority in the NFL draft, or you think they'd go after another free agent, someone like Cam Robinson, perhaps?
Oh man. I'm of the mindset of you don't let, like, I believe Jackson wants back with the Rams. I don't think you let him want, like, I think you have to pay him, what he's worth. Because he's a young left
20,
tackle.
26 years old.
Yeah. And like I was looking at this earlier today. Like, if you look at, the top paid tackles in the league, they're all making over 22, 23.5. Like, Trent Williams is over $27 million a year. And like all of I guess you got like Christian Darisaw for the Vikings is 26. Andrew Thomas for the Giants is 26. And both of them are like, Thomas is 23.5 million, and then Darisaw is 26 million a year. I see Jackson getting that kind of money.
Yeah. Yeah, he deserves it. He deserves it, I think. Yeah. And it's just a dilemma the Rams have at the tackle position in general, because Rob Havenstein getting up there in years as well.
Yeah.
Their interior, I think, is pretty solid, pretty deep. And the free agents going out the door. If you look at all the free agents the Rams have, I mean, there's a bunch of them, but none of them beyond Jackson are really super critical. They're
Yeah.
going to have some depth issues to address. Inside linebacker, which they barely care about. Wide receiver, you know, they got a bunch of cornerbacks or safety groups really good. So I still think they're going to draft a tackle at some point in this draft. It'd be nice, you know, if they make sure secure Stafford, bring back Jackson, and that gives them a lot of flexibility in the first round, especially. They could trade back, they could just take the best player available. So hopefully they get that figured out.
So
Now,
I
go
got a
ahead.
question for you there. This is a
Yeah.
fun question I've been asking other Ram fans. So right now you have Michael Hoyt and Alaric Jackson as the Canadians on the Rams.
Oh yeah.
Over under 2.5 Rams on the 2025 roster that are Canadian.
Canadians.
Yeah, Canadian Rams.
Well, I would probably 2.5.
Yeah.
Well, I'd have to take the under. I have no problem with Canadian football players. Why is there a third one you have in mind that might come over?
um,
I know
I,
there's someone. I know, if I'm not mistaken, there's a wide receiver in the draft out of Canada.
I'd have to still do my draft prep. I I'm not sure about that. Like I think like I know the first and tuna podcast, he mentioned when I asked him this question that Chase Claypool could come.
Right, right.
So maybe if he's available, Canadians selfishly want Claypool in the CFL, but I as a Canadian Rams fan, I always have this invested interest of what Canadians are on the Rams. One of my favorite Rams players of all time, back when they were in St. Louis, was OJ Atogwe.
All
Uh,
right. Yeah.
I have
Stanford.
one of my best friends actually went to high school with him and played with him on his high school team. And yeah, so I've always been a fan of Canadian Rams.
Yeah, Claypool was out of British Columbia, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken, somewhere up
that
there.
yeah,
And Atagwe, that's the one thing I think I bring to our podcast. Paul and Ian are X and O guys and draft specialists, and I think I'm pretty good with the history. And I always felt Atagwe. He played in the dark days
yeah,
of the St. Louis Rams, but I thought that in different circumstances on a different team, he could have been a multi-year Pro Bowler.
totally,
He was a very good football player. So there was a lot of guys I think that were at least a smattering of players during those days that were very very good football players and didn't get the recognition they deserved.
totally.
Did you hear? One of the things that Ian and Paul talk about on this podcast continuously is the Rams' offense, as brilliant as Sean McVay is, being somewhat predictable. 11 personnel. The same run schemes, the same passing schemes, blocking schemes, and just not being very creative players, especially wide receivers. I think he meant being very not very versatile. And when injuries come along, it makes it difficult to flex and do different things. So, did you hear that conversation he had, or
I,
are you aware of that?
yeah, I remember hearing about that. I remember thinking at the time, I feel like a lot of Ram fans are frustrated that McVay doesn't ever seem to coach to dominate a game. He coaches to win a game. And when the game, if they're playing, an opponent like the Bills or something, and they're able to go, point for point and beat them in a close game, that's exciting, right? And even earlier in the year when they kept the game close and they stole the game from the 49ers right at the end of it, I think McVay has gotten a lot better in those kind of situational moments where the game's close and how to, kind of snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. But there was a time in 2017, 2018, 2019 it started to go away. We saw it again in the 2021 season, just like where the Rams would go and they would just like for an inferior opponent, they would just destroy them, right? Instead of playing down to their level or something like that. And I think that's kind of what I took away when you guys had that conversation of like, this is a frustration, and we'd like to get back to a place where the Rams are competing for like the 1 seed in the NFC.
Yeah, you're right. Back in those McVay's first 2.5 years or so, I think it was until Gurley got hurt.
Yeah.
They were there. There was a lot of 33-10 games.
Yeah.
That type of thing, and that was fun. Football is almost reminiscent of the greatest show on turf. Not as quite as explosive, but still a lot of fun. Hey, so you said before we recorded, you wanted to talk to me about you wanted to get to know the LA fan base a little bit better. What'd you have in
Yeah.
mind?
Well, I'm always just so curious, and I know that the Rams have a kind of it's a weird history with their fandom, right? Starting in Cleveland, moving to LA, moving to St. Louis, moving back to LA. I've met lots of people who tell me like, oh, I used to be a Rams fan, but then I became a Raiders fan. I became a 49ers fan when they moved out of LA or something like that. And I for a lot of years, even when they moved back to LA in 2016, you always felt okay, like this is a big move. You're moving to a much bigger market, but you're not just gonna necessarily have a plethora of fans, right? And I would love to see SoFi truly develop, a home field advantage. And I think we kind of got robbed of that, towards the end of the year when you had to play the playoff game, against the Vikings in Arizona. But I really do think that this fan base is growing, and I would love to know from your local perspective. Like I see the Rams doing all these fan events and things like that. They're highlighting Rams legends and historic players. But from your perspective, like, do you see this fan base growing to the point where like it could be on that same level of like the Packers or like the Steelers or the 49ers, where it's just like even on the road, like you just see massive amounts of Ram fans everywhere? Because I don't think we're there yet, but I think we're getting there.
Well, yeah, the Rams history is so it's I don't know how to characterize it, but there have been so many bumps in the road in building a fan base. The first bump in the road, I mean, in the late '60s, early '70s, the Rams were big. They were, not as big as the Dodgers and Lakers, but they were pretty close. They were extremely popular.
Wow.
And then, unfortunately, and I never really understood, I think Georgia Frontiere and the whole Anaheim thing, both those things combined, a lot of, I hate to say it, but I think a lot of Ram fans had a problem with Georgia for a variety of reasons. I didn't really care. I mean, there's a lot of owners that I think owners are generally, fans like to hate their owners. It seems like there's a little bit of that going on, especially when the team struggles. And then she takes them to St. Louis. That didn't help, obviously. And now they come back, and I think there's certainly been growth. I'm noticing more and more Rams fans just out and about, and I'm in North San Diego County mostly.
Right.
But when I go to LA, they're certainly they're rebounding, but it's going to take a generation, I think, of players like Puka Nacua.
Yeah.
I mean, the guys like that. How there's got to be, there's a little flag football league around the corner from my house, and a lot of 10, 11, 12-year-old boys and girls playing flag football. And I can't help but think that a large percentage of them are in love with Puka Nacua and watching them play football. Guys like that, and Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp too. But the biggest problem that, the nature of Los Angeles is never going to change. It's a metropolis of 13 million people. And there's never going to be, if you're in Green Bay, I suspect it's 98% Packer fans.
Yeah.
And that's never going to change. Minneapolis, same thing. Jacksonville, probably the same thing. Chicago, maybe a little bit different, more of a metropolis, a metropolitan city. Los Angeles it's got a little bit of everything. And And so what you have to, we see the same thing in San Diego with the Chargers. Charger fans go to every home game, and then the Packers come to town if they happen to come to town. And there are Packer fans throughout Southern California because some of them have moved here. I know them. I've worked with guys that grew up in Wisconsin and they're living in Southern California. There's not a lot of Southern Californians living in Green Bay, I'm pretty sure, you know. And I'm sorry, there just aren't. Take that however you want. So when the Packers come to town, it's once every for the Chargers, even worse. You know, the Chargers, if the Packers come to town once every 8 years, you're a Charger season ticket holder, and you're like, you know what, I can get $1,000 for this ticket. You know, and it's just that's just human nature. So when I don't think that problem's ever going to go away. Yeah. When at SoFi, when popular teams, the Steelers, the Packers, the Cowboys come to LA, the only thing that's going to really stop that, no matter how big the Ram fan base is in a city that big with Packers, Steelers fans, Cowboys fans, virtually every one of these teams has their own sports bar, if not 5 or 10 of them in Greater Los Angeles. The only thing that's going to stop that is if, you know, the Ram fans that hold those season tickets to say, like, I'm sorry, man, I'm going. Yeah. But I don't think it's ever going to go away completely. And, you know, if the Rams go on a run and win a couple more Super Bowls here, that would be a big step in that direction. But it's just the nature of Southern California, you know? It's just the way it is.
And it was interesting to me. I really appreciate your insights into this. Like, when I went to my first game at SoFi, the Rams were playing the Falcons. And I remember talking to a lot of Falcons fans at the hotel that I was staying at. And I was with like a group of them. I was the only Rams fan in this hotel, and we were getting wings at the bar. And this was like this was 2 nights before the game. And I'll never forget, this one Falcons fan told me, he was like, oh, as soon as the schedule came out and I saw like we're playing in LA in September, I booked off my vacation from work, and I'm having, like, they make a week of it, right? And I think that's part of it too. Like, no one's doing that.
I left that part out. That's the other part of it is, it's I was in Pasadena a couple of months ago, and the University of Minnesota was in town to play the Bruins, and we were up in the Pasadena area for a number of other reasons, and the hotel was packed with Minnesota fans, and they were just loving it. You know, they were just enjoying it. And you're right. So I guess the point, one of the things I wanted to say is that sometimes I think it's a misnomer for people to say, and what you're saying is true, fans do travel, but in a lot of cases, they're already here. Yeah, you know, they're already here. But you are right, and I've made that joke on the podcast a few times with Ian and Paul. You know, it's 8 degrees in Minneapolis. Yeah, there's probably going to be some Vikings fans showing up. You know.
So, just kind of a final question is like, does it excite you, the growth you've seen from the Ram fandom, and then do you think that like the next 5-10 years, like we're going to get to continue to see that?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I think it's going to continue to grow, especially if some of the other franchises that are popular around here, the Raiders and the 49ers, if the Raiders continue to struggle. I think that, you know, if you think about it, most of the people I know, they became fans of their team, you know, in between like maybe 7 and 12 years old. Yeah. I think that's pretty common. And whether it's from your parents or not, but so I think there's the Rams are seizing an opportunity, having a pretty strong run here. You know, since they've come back to LA, they've got to be gaining some fans. But you know, it's just not as it's very difficult to have line of sight on that in an area with 13 million people spread out, you know, Ventura, Orange, LA County. I've noticed a lot of fans down in San Diego too, Ram fans that have bailed on the Chargers for a variety of reasons. So it's, you know, I just think it's hard to compare Los Angeles. People say there are no Ram fans. Well, there are plenty of Ram fans, but you know, it's just such a big city and such a big area. You know, it's not like driving through St. Louis, even a city like St. Louis, and just Cardinals fan, talking baseball here, just as an example. It's just different in Southern California, and if there's 200,000, 500,000 Ram fans in LA, yeah, they're gonna they're not going to be as visible, as in other cities.
No,
It's kind of hard to explain. Hopefully, I'm explaining it, but
you did a great job articulating that. Thank you, Mark. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a good time for the Rams. I think if they had gotten to another Super Bowl this year, 3 Super Bowls since coming back, that would have been a really big deal. But they're relevant virtually every year except the one season. They got great ownership. They got great leadership, a fantastic culture. I don't know if you saw me with the Eagles podcaster. He had me on and we talked about, the one thing that he asked me the one reason that separates the Rams, that gives the Rams a shot in a game like that with the Eagles. And I said, it's their culture. Their culture in that locker room, that team, they do almost everything right from a team's perspective. And that's why I think they have, success virtually every year over and over again. It's all about that culture that McVay has built there. And an owner that gives them the tools to succeed and gets out of the way. A general manager that, can succeed in different ways, drafting high, trading draft picks, they're a really great organization.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. No, thank you very much for your insights into the local fandom. And, I'm holding down the fort here in Nova Scotia, Canada.
Yeah, man. And I know that's a beautiful part of Canada. Don't know if I'll ever get, I've considered doing one of those, the cruises that go through Quebec City and then down to down the coast there. We may still get around to doing that eventually. I've heard wonderful things. I know that Quebec City isn't necessarily where you are, but I think that cruise would take you near Nova Scotia, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a hobby travel agent, so I have that conversation all the time. If you ever need
Yeah.
recommendations, definitely send me a line.
Yeah. My daughter advised me that Quebec City was one of her favorite places she's ever been.
Cool.
So that's one of the spots on my bucket list. We'll see how much time I have to hit all my everything left on my bucket list.
So I got one more question before we continue. So I'm a big believer that the Stafford contract is kind of the first domino we're waiting to fall in this off season, and then Cooper Kupp right after that. Do you think that Alaric Jackson or Kyren Williams extension are kind of those next 2 dominoes that right after that?
Yeah, I think it'd have to be Alaric Jackson and the Kyren Williams. It kind of surprised me a little bit. I'd love for them to bring him back. I'm a Kyren Williams booster, but I thought the Blake Corum pick might have been a move to give them some leverage if they decided to move on from Kyren. But I don't think we've seen enough of Blake Corum, to make that move. But yeah, running backs, it kind of sucks to be a running back these days in the NFL. You don't get the big money, you don't necessarily get the extensions, but yeah, I would think Kyren Williams would be the next guy. Yeah.
Cool.
And I still think they need to, I'd really like to see them add an elite cornerback, probably through the draft. If they get all these other things, all these other boxes checked, I think cornerback and wide receiver would be my priorities in the draft, but got some time to think about that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, Payo, time. It's been fun, man. We got to do this more often. And we'll, if you ever want to have one of us on your show, let us know. We'll do everything we can to accommodate you. So all you and hey, Ram fans out there, if you haven't found his Payo Times YouTube channel, check it out. It's a lot of fun. Subscribe and listen. He does a great job. Very optimistic view of the Rams, very up, and feel good. You have a feel good YouTube channel, is how I would describe it.
It's a huge compliment. Thank you very much, Mark.
Yeah. Okay, man. Thanks a lot. And out here, and we'll do this again. Maybe after the draft, we'll get together. How about that?
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
What's
man.
up?
All right. Thanks, Payo Time.